There are aircraft that become symbols of an entire nation's will to survive. The Supermarine Spitfire didn't just participate in the Battle of Britain, it was the Battle of Britain in the public imagination. Graceful elliptical wings, the thunder of a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, young pilots scrambling against impossible odds. But here's what most people don't know. This legendary fighter almost never got built. It was designed by a dying man, dismissed as too expensive, and nearly canceled before it could prove itself. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll uncover how a racing seaplane's DNA became the most iconic fighter of World War II, and why it remained deadly throughout the entire war, an almost unprecedented achievement. This is the story of the Supermarine Spitfire. A man obsessed with speed, dying of cancer, creates the weapon that saves a nation. Reginald Mitchell never wanted to design weapons. He was obsessed with speed. By 1931, his racing seaplane, the Supermarine S-6B, had won the Schneider Trophy permanently for Britain and set a world speed record of 407 miles per hour. These weren't weapons. They were pure expressions of aerodynamic perfection. Sleek fuselages, powerful engines, and thin, elegant wings that cut through air like knives. Mitchell learned something crucial. Speed wasn't just about power, it was the marriage of power and form. Then came 1934. Nazi Germany was rearming. War was coming. The British Air Ministry desperately needed a new fighter with 8 machine guns, unprecedented firepower. Mitchell was dying of cancer. He was exhausted. He had no interest in building killing machines. But he understood what was at stake. So he took everything he'd learned from racing and began designing a fighter. That beautiful elliptical wing, not chosen for looks, it was the most aerodynamically efficient shape possible. Thinnest cross-section, maximum lift, minimal drag. All metal construction instead of fabric-covered biplanes. Retractable landing gear when most fighters still had fixed wheels, creating massive drag. And the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, a liquid-cooled V12 producing 1,030 horsepower, with enormous potential for growth. The prototype flew March 5, 1936. Test pilot Joseph Summers landed and told Mitchell, "Don't touch anything." The highest compliment possible, the design was right. Reginald Mitchell died of cancer in June 1937 at just 42 years old. He never saw his Spitfire in combat, but his legacy was about to save Britain. The aircraft that saved Britain almost never made it into production. Here's the shocking part. The Air Ministry nearly canceled the Spitfire. It was expensive, twice the cost of the Hacker Hurricane. That gorgeous elliptical wing required complex compound curves and hundreds of components. Workers needed special training. Production was agonizingly slow. By September 1939, when war began, Britain had only 300 Spitfires, compared to 500 Hurricanes. The debate was serious. Cancel the Spitfire program, focus on the simpler Hurricane. They didn't, thank God. Early Spitfires had problems. The carburetor had a fatal flaw. In negative G dives, fuel cut out momentarily. German Messerschmitt pilots with fuel injection could exploit this, diving away while Spitfires sputtered. But pilots loved it. It was responsive, forgiving, fast. 360 miles per hour. It could outturn virtually anything, and it was beautiful. Never underestimate the psychological advantage of flying a beautiful aircraft. 640 fighters versus 2,800. Teenagers against the Nazi war machine. Britain's survival hung by a thread. Summer 1940. France had fallen. Hitler controlled Western Europe. Only 21 miles of English Channel water stood between Britain and invasion. Hitler's plan? Destroy the Royal Air Force, achieve air superiority, launch Operation Sea Lion, the invasion. Luftwaffe, 2,800 aircraft, 1,000 fighters. Fighter Command, 640 fighters, 350 Hurricanes, 290 Spitfires. German advantages? Numbers, experience, battle-hardened pilots. Fighting over home territory, downed British pilots could return to action within hours. Radar, revolutionary early warning technology. And a brilliant tactical doctrine. Here's what most people miss. Hurricanes shot down more German aircraft than Spitfires during the Battle of Britain. But there's crucial context. Hurricanes targeted bomber formations, breaking them up, shooting down as many as possible. Spitfires fought the escorts, taking on the deadly Messerschmitt Bf 109s and 110s. They kept German fighters busy so Hurricanes could do their work. Spitfires fought the hardest opponents. The Bf 109 was excellent, fast, well-armed, good climb rate. It had advantages: fuel injection, more ammunition, better high-altitude performance initially. But the Spitfire could outturn it. In a dogfight, the Spitfire had the edge. British pilots learned to force turning engagements. Germans learned hit-and-run tactics, dive, shoot, climb away before the Spitfire could respond. The pilots were extraordinary. Many barely 20 years old. Some were teenagers. They flew 5 or 6 missions per day. Land, refuel, rearm, scramble again. The exhaustion was crushing. They fell asleep mid-sentence, developed 1,000-yard stares. Some broke down. But they kept flying, because they knew if they failed, Britain would fall, and Nazi darkness would consume Europe. August 15, 1940, Black Thursday. The Luftwaffe lost 75 aircraft in one day, but Fighter Command was being ground down too. Pilots killed faster than replacements arrived, airfields destroyed. The situation was desperate. September 7th, the Germans shifted from targeting RAF airfields to bombing London in retaliation for RAF raids on Berlin. The Blitz was a humanitarian catastrophe. Tens of thousands would die, but strategically, it gave Fighter Command breathing room to rebuild, repair, train new pilots. By October's end, the Luftwaffe had failed to achieve air superiority. Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion indefinitely. Britain had survived. Churchill said it perfectly. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. And at the center of it all was the Spitfire, symbol of British defiance itself. From 360 miles per hour to 454 miles per hour. From 1,030 horsepower to 2,050. Same airframe. That's not an upgrade, that's evolution. Most aircraft designs hit a ceiling. Eventually, you need to start over. Not the Spitfire. Spitfire Mark I, 1938. 1,030 horsepower, 360 miles per hour. Spitfire Mark 24, 1946, 2,050 horsepower, 454 miles per hour. Nearly double the power, 100 miles per hour faster, same basic airframe. Over 20 major variants, over 20,300 built. Let me give you the critical moments. The German Focke-Wulf FW-190 appears, faster, more heavily armed than the Spitfire Mark V. British pilots are shocked, suddenly outclassed. Mark IX rushed into production. New Merlin 61 engine with two-stage supercharger. Dramatically better high-altitude performance, suddenly matching and exceeding the FW-190. Intended as temporary, over 5,600 built. Mark 14 powered by the Rolls-Royce Griffon, larger, more powerful than the Merlin, distinctive 5-blade propeller, fast enough to chase V-1 flying bombs. Spitfires fought in every theater, North African deserts, sand filters needed, aircraft carriers as sea fires, challenging with that long nose and narrow gear, Far East against Japanese. Unarmed photo reconnaissance Spitfires, painted pale blue or pink, flew at extreme altitudes, photographing French beaches before D-Day, German factories deep in the Reich. Fighter bombers carried bombs and rockets. Trainers had second cockpits added. The Spitfire's adaptability was extraordinary. Need more range? Add fuel tanks. More firepower? Replace 8 machine guns with 4 20mm cannon. Better visibility? Redesign the canopy with a bubble top. By war's end, 20,300 Spitfires built, remained in production longer than any other British fighter. The last RAF combat mission in a Spitfire was 1954, nearly 20 years after the first flight. But the legend? That's eternal. The Spitfire's combat career didn't end in 1945. Greek Civil War, Malayan emergency, counterinsurgency operations. The last RAF combat sortie was 1954 in Malaya, nearly 20 years after the prototype flew. France, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, Ireland, and even Israel flew Spitfires. Some Israeli pilots in 1948 had flown Spitfires in the Battle of Britain 8 years earlier. The Hurricane shot down more planes in 1940. The P-51 Mustang had better range. The FW-190 was more stable. Yet none achieved the iconic status of the Spitfire. Part aesthetic. The Spitfire is simply beautiful. That elliptical wing, those smooth lines, it looks fast standing still. Part timing. It was there at Britain's moment of maximum danger, when survival hung by a thread. Inseparable from Churchill's words, from images of young pilots sacrificing everything. Part human story. Look at photographs of Spitfire pilots from 1940. Young faces, boys really, with old eyes. 20-year-olds who aged decades in months. Many didn't survive. About 240 Spitfires survive worldwide. Roughly 50 to 60 are airworthy. Seeing one fly connects you instantly to that pivotal moment. The Merlin's sound, those elliptical wings cutting through sky, it's visceral, emotional. The Spitfire represents something fundamental about human ingenuity and determination. Designed by a dying man who poured his genius into a tool he hoped would never be needed.
built by factory workers, many of them women, working round the clock. Flown by young people who understood they might not see tomorrow, but climbed into the cockpit anyway. Reginald Mitchell never saw his Spitfire in combat, but his creation helped ensure democracy survived one of its darkest hours. In doing so, it became more than an aircraft. It became a legend.
Smash that like button and subscribe for more secrets like this. See you next time.